recording. I promised a replay and I can't replay it if I don't record it. So if you follow any of my content, you know that I am all about, approaching healthy habits from a place of love, and a place of compassion, and really just kind of finding the reasons to love yourself. And that then becomes the reason why you change your habits for the more positive. So to that end, that's kind of where a lot of this is coming from, is this kind of how do we find that self-love, and then how do we convert that self-love into a behavior or a habit change. So that's a lot of what we're going to see tonight. A lot of that is also related to just kind of things of empowerment. All too often we forget that the way we view ourselves and the way we talk to ourselves and the habits that we've developed as a result of that self-talk, those are all learned behaviors, right? So those are things that we have learned to do. And just like we learned to do them at one point in time, we can unlearn them too, right? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about a lot tonight. And then we'll kind of get you guys set up on some goals for how you're going to kind of proceed. And the reason why I kind of, through in the 2022 is not that it's a new year, new you or anything like that. It's more that like this is your chance to start a year-long journey, right? Whatever it is that you are trying to change, whether it involves weight loss, whether it even involves nutrition, it is likely going to be a process, right? It may not be something that you do every day for the rest of your life, and what you do every day to honor it may change, but it's still an ongoing process. And I think kind of having that scope of, I'm going to dedicate this year to whatever it is. That's kind of the mentality that I want us to start to develop together. So how do we advance our slides here? Sorry guys, hold on. Okay. So a few housekeeping items, we already talked about that. Raise your hand, unmute yourself, click the unmute, or just type it in the chat. Also, this is all of my contact information. If you guys want to take a quick picture of that, it'll also be at the end as well. So this is particularly for anybody who is listening on the replay, now that we're recording, that this is all the contact information, since you won't have the opportunity to ask me questions live. Obviously, you can email me. Those are my handles for Instagram and TikTok. On Facebook, it's just my name, which is Erin Casey. And then, of course, like I said, I would love your feedback. So as a symbol of my gratitude, to thank you all for being here. Some of you have already got my 2022 planning guide. And if you have gotten it, I hope that you are enjoying it. And if you have any feedback or any wish list items for things like that in the future, please, please, please let me know. But it's a freebie. It's just available on my website, but I will also make sure that everyone who's in attendance tonight will get a free one as well. And then you also, those of you who are here today, so this doesn't apply if you're watching the replay, but if you are here tonight, you get a free 30-minute consult. So normally I charge $120 for an initial consult. So you are getting that for free. That said, you are getting less time. So typically an initial consult is 60 to 90 minutes. So you're getting 30, but it's still a huge, huge head start. So that is just kind of my gift to you. Some of you are already clients of mine, and that's totally fine, right? We can work in a free 30-minute counseling session if you would like, but this is just kind of my gift for you. It's a chance to sit down, go over your goals, talk about what you're doing nutrition wise. Certainly we can talk about paid for programs, and if that's something that you would like to pursue in the future, but it's also just kind of a chance to sit down with a dietitian, no holds barred, and kind of just get all of your specific questions for your specific goals answered. So like I said, I appreciate your guys' time. I want to give that back. So that's just kind of my pay it forward to you all. Those of you who are watching the replay, Sorry, but I do free discovery calls. So I do that for anybody. So if you're somebody who is interested in nutrition counseling, but you're not quite sure what it is, or you're not sure if it's for you, or if it would even be able to help you, then book a 15-minute discovery call. We'll be happy to sit down and chat with you. I won't go over like, you could tell me what your goals are. I won't give you advice per se, but I can tell you whether or not I think I can help you. And honestly, sometimes I can't. Like sometimes it's something that you need to talk to a doctor about, or it's something that is not really nutrition related. It's maybe better suited in like a mental health space or things like that. So, and I'm honest about that. I'm not going to take anybody's money for a problem that I don't think I can solve. And we also talk about what the process might look like for you, what the cost would look like for you if it is a fit. So those are free for anybody who is watching on replay, but those of you who are here live, you get a free 30-minute consult where you actually do get advice. All right, so my goals for tonight. By the end of the webinar, you are going to learn to recognize and reject diet culture. We're going to talk a ton about diet culture. If you follow my social media content, you know that that diet culture is a big part of what I actually work to fight against. So we're going to talk about what it is, how to recognize it, how it has probably affected your life, and then how to fight against it too, because ultimately it is going to be the undoing of everyone's mental health and physical health if we don't stop it. So we're certainly going to talk extensively about that. We're also going to talk about meeting ourselves where we are with compassion. So that's kind of where this whole idea of fall in love with you comes from, right? It is, how do I find myself where I am and learn to love that person? It's okay if you want to make them better. It's okay if you want to make changes, but you have to learn to love that person first, because if your changes and your goals and your mission for yourself is not coming from a place of love, it is honestly not going to last very long. And we're going to talk all about why that is and how to correct it, because it is a very, very common experience that I see. And then we're also going to talk about how to build a plan, right? So like once you kind of get to that place of self-love and self-compassion, what the heck do you do, right? There's so much misinformation out there, not even misinformation, there's so much information out there about kind of do this, don't do that. And it's just kind of a whole jarbled, confusing mess. And how can you break it down into maintainable, sustainable, realistic steps that you personally can take, right? Because even though if you saw something work for somebody else, it may have worked for them, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And that's okay, right? People are different. There's so many different ways to go about things, but how do you kind of find that best groove for you? We're going to talk a lot about that. So I hope you guys are excited. I want to actually, let me see, who's excited? Give me like a show of hands or an exclamation point or something in the chat box while I'm sipping water. I've been talking a lot today, so my voice is like having a bit of a meltdown. Okay, good. We've got some excited. Cindy, I'm glad you're excited. Awesome. So I'm excited that you guys are excited. That's awesome. So some of you know me fairly well, but some of you don't. So I'm just going to kind of give a very brief intro on myself as well as my practice mission. So my practice, so just to be clear, my practice is New You Nutrition. The email that you got this from, it should have been like New You Nutrition Counseling, newunutrition.com. That's my website. So that's my company. Right now, I just do private practice here in Kentucky, but I am hoping to expand to group practices that will be virtual. So we'll be doing group weight loss, diabetes management, that kind of thing. I'm working on it. We're not there yet. But anyway, my mission is to empower people to break the cycle of dieting. And I'm not going to like pause there for a second. I'm a dietitian, right? The name diet is in my name, or is in my title rather. But I'm trying to help people break the cycle of dieting, because diets don't work. And then by breaking that cycle, we're going to find food freedom. And I'm doing this by teaching them to nourish their bodies well, right? So it's kind of all within the theme of tonight, right? We're not following diets. We're not following strict rules. We're finding the groove that works for us, because we are meeting ourselves at a place of compassion. It is about nourishment. It is not about restriction. It is about love. It is not about hate. So that's kind of the very hallmark of my mission as well. So let's talk about it, right? So let's talk about diet culture. So diet culture is a system of beliefs that values weight, shape, or size over health and well-being. I'm going to read that again, just in case anybody's only listening to audio. Diet culture is a system of values that values weight, shape, and size over health and well-being. Now, you may be thinking, well, doesn't my weight and doesn't my shape affect my health? No, it does not. We have lots and lots of evidence now that very, very clearly points that weight and health are actually two very different things. They may be related, right? The habits that drive your weight will also drive your health, but that does not mean that your weight and your health have a causational relationship. They don't. And we'll talk a lot more about why that is, but kind of I just want to prime you guys to think, okay, for this webinar, we are rejecting anything that says that weight, shape, and size in any way dictate your health, but also dictate your worth. And I think that is kind of the more subtle, but far more damaging piece of diet culture, right? Just saying that, oh, well, your weight affects your health, it's incorrect. But it's probably in and of itself not that damaging. The damaging piece is to say that your weight, your size, and your shape dictate your worth as a human being. And that's subtle, but it's definitely there. Certainly anybody who's lived in a larger body, myself included, can tell you that you are treated differently when you're in a larger body. And that's got to stop. So as Katie's saying, amen. Yes, sister, I hear you. So hearing you say yes, testify. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody who's either gained or lost a significant amount of weight will tell you that you were praised. When we're getting into this now, is that I'm a survivor of diet culture, right? So that's why I'm here. That's why I became a dietitian, is because I survived this. And I'm born, you guys probably can't see my whole body, but I'm a thicker girl, right? I'm just thick. Even my mom always told me as a baby, I was just very dense, I think was the word that she used, is that I wasn't large per se, but it's just you pick me up, you'd be like, wow, why is that kid so heavy? I was that kid. I'm dense, I'm thick. It's the way I've always been. That said, I remember being in kindergarten clearly and comparing the size of my thighs to my classmates. I was that young when I realized that my body was larger than other people's, and nobody had to even tell me. I just somehow knew that somehow wasn't okay. So that's how young this starts. That's how toxic it is. Throughout my childhood and teen years, obviously, that only got worse. My mom, great person, but very ingrained in diet culture herself, and very much commented on her own body. So if any of you listening have children, particularly young children, particularly girls, be really careful how you talk about yourself and about your body in front of your children, because they pick that stuff up. Like I said, nobody told me that my thighs were thick. Nobody told me that was a bad thing. It was just something that I somehow inherently knew based on what I'd picked up from the culture around me. So that's kind of, that's where I was. Katie saying in the chat, yeah, absolutely. When you lose weight, it's always congrats. Oh my gosh, what are you doing? You look so good. So kind of, to continue with my own story, as a teenager, I was the largest size and I was a healthy kid, right? I was very healthy. I was active, and I was still the largest size in the juniors department. So it was really kind of almost traumatizing for me to go shopping, because it's I don't know if these clothes are going to fit. Meanwhile, all my friends are wearing 5 or 6 sizes smaller than me. It just became a really hard, it wasn't fun the way shopping as a teenage girl should be. And then kind of no surprise, by the time I was 25, I was bulimic. And Katie, I think this speaks to your point so well, is that I was eating less than 800 calories a day. I was skin and bones, but I was praised for it. I was told, you look good. Wow, you've dropped so much weight. Oh my gosh, I can see your arm definition because I was starving, because there was no fat, but you're praised for it. So you keep going. My particular way of purging was by exercise. But that doesn't, mean there's not other ways of purging as well. From the outside, I looked like a healthy person, but inside it was torture. It was day in, day out, obsessive calorie counting, feeling like I couldn't eat anything, never going out and being social. My hair was falling out. I was breaking bones. You get into this vicious spiral and you just can't stop. By the time I was 27, I was diagnosed with PCOS, which I was told at the time that I couldn't control my weight as a result of PCOS, and there basically wasn't anything they could do. And then I started doing my own research. And that basically led me to my career as a dietitian, because it's just like, okay, nobody in the medical community was willing to help me or take what had going on seriously. So, I kind of had to advocate for myself. And then I realized there's a whole profession of people who do just that. So I decided that I wanted to be one of them. And, just a couple of years and a couple $1,000s later, and by a couple, I mean like $100,000. Here I am talking to you fine folks, and it's wonderful. So anyway, that's kind of me, and that's why this is important to me. It's because diet culture, it took away probably about 10 years of my life, and it was really hard. And if I can save anybody from having to go through that, I will. If I can stop anybody in the midst of their cycle, I will, because there's a lot of misinformation out there that perpetuates this. And it's bullshit. So I'm here to dispel the myths and kind of teach you guys the realistic and then the accurate way of kind of looking at your bodies, as well as looking at nutrition and fitness and things like that. Okay, so how are we going to recognize and reject diet culture? So that graphic that is on there, you can see there's all kinds of different diets, right? So there's a vegan diet, there's an anti-inflammatory diet, there's a soup diet, there's a low cholesterol diet, there's a Mediterranean diet, there's a keto diet, there's the DASH diet, there's, Lord have mercy, somebody told me about like a chicken salad diet or something, like all you do is eat chicken salad for like 3 days straight or something like that. There's a million different diets out there, right? Yeah, anything with a name on it, run away. Exactly. So, right. So like all of these diets are basically like they're trying to solve a problem, right? And to an extent, I think a lot of the research that goes into this honestly isn't misguided, right? They're trying to they're trying to solve a problem with diet, because they know that diet is a part of it. The problem is they're taking something that is egregiously complicated and trying to oversimplify it. And then because that doesn't work, then they come up with another one, and then that ends up overcomplicating it. And basically what you wind up with is this giant mess of, information that to an extent has some truth to it, but it's just kind of like no diet ever is going to be the end all be all, right? Anything with a name on it is not going to be the end all be all. It is going to be modifications from where you are to where you want to go. And what that looks like is totally different for everybody, which is why you're never going to come up with a singular diet, a singular plan that works best in any two people. Right? You can have two people, both have diabetes, same age, but different lifestyles, right? Two different diets, they're going to work differently, right? There's not going to be any, there's not going to be any overlap there. So it's, there's no two people that I counsel are ever the same, even if their diseases are the same, even if their life circumstances are the same. There's preferences, there's financial barriers, there's all kinds of stuff that goes into why we eat the way we do. So a diet's never going to work. You're never going to come up with a diet for the masses. So to that end, but some of the clinical research has tried, and then especially when it comes to weight loss, the diet industry has kind of capitalized on these research half truths and made millions telling you that you are not enough, and then trying to sell you the product that is going to fix it, right? So they have made millions and millions of dollars, and they make it sound very scientific. Katie and I were actually talking about this on a live earlier today, is that, we make it sound so scientific, right? Like the ketogenic diet sounds plausible, right? Like anybody in the fitness, wellness, nutrition industry knows that keto is complete BS, but they make it sound so scientific. And intermittent fasting is another one that like people make it sound so good for you. And it's crap, and it's marketing, but it's marketing that is very well done, right? Because ultimately these are people who are trying to make money off of you. But that said, it's okay that we've believed it, because it does sound so scientific, and some of it does come from science. It's just kind of those pieces of science are like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, right? Like if you have 5 pieces of a 1,000-piece puzzle, you can't really see a clear image. You need all of the pieces together. And I think that's kind of how nutrition is that we're not going to see the clear picture until we have all the pieces. And for everybody, the pieces are different. So, somebody may have high cholesterol, and they may also have diabetes, and they may also have GI intolerances. And those are all things that we have to manage together. So trying to sift through the crap that's on the internet can be really hard, right? Because a lot of the information you find conflicts with each other. And, even when it's just weight loss, a lot of the information is just like, well, do this, don't do that. And then you find another site that says the exact opposite. So, I was somebody who bought into it, right? Like I was somebody who believed it. Like I said, I'm a survivor of diet culture. I've been there. I know what it feels like. And it's confusing, and it's overwhelming, and it feels like you just can't eat anything and be right, right? It feels like no matter what you're doing is wrong. And that's part of the game, because they can't just keep selling the same products. Eventually people are going to catch on that this shit doesn't work. So then they change it, right? Then they change it, be like, oh, well, actually, like this is a new thing. But then it's kind of like you've read up on thing 1, now you've got thing 2. And now, you kind of move on thing 3, thing 4, and it just becomes this giant jarbled, like, what in the heck am I actually supposed to eat? And we'll get to that. We will absolutely get to that. My point here, though, is that we want to kind of focus on recognizing diet culture. So anything that has a name on it, like Kieran said, run away, run as fast and as far as you can. But also anything that tells you that you need to do a certain thing, either eliminate a certain thing or eat a certain thing, whether it is like a supplement, a type of food, anything like that. Anything that tells you like you should eat this or not eat that for a certain health condition, run away. So that can be as simple as elderberry, for immune health, or I don't know, don't eat eggs if you have high cholesterol, those kinds of things. Those things are myths. And they're honestly, they're partial truths, but nothing in nutrition is absolute. So if they're telling you you need to eat gobs of this or avoid ever eating that, run away. Let's see. The other thing to point out is that weight is not a determinant of health. So I know I said this in the beginning, and I want to kind of spend a little bit more time on it here. So there are kind of generally agreed upon 4 main determinants of health. Those are your nutrition, so kind of your overall diet quality, your physical activity, or whether or not you are physically active. It doesn't really specify like the type of physical activity. It's just whether or not you move your body most days. And then the 3rd one is whether or not you smoke. Smoking is bad for your health. And then sleep. And the last one is it's argued between sleep and stress. I would argue that they're kind of the same thing. But anyways, those 4 things. So nutrition, movement, sleep, and smoking. Those are kind of your main 4 things that drive your health. And genetics are in there as well, but that's not something you can change. So we ignore it, but it's also a factor there as well. But like I said, all 4 of those things may affect your weight, but they may not. right? Plenty of people, I have plenty of clients that are in the overweight or obese category on a BMI scale that do all of those things right. Their lab work is fine. Their, mental health is fine. So, their mobility is fine. Like there is nothing wrong with them physically. They're just quote unquote overweight. Um, so weight really isn't a determinant of your health. And I think that's probably the biggest lie we have all been told, partly by the health industry, but also certainly by the diet industry as well. Let's see. And then diets, kind of just to sum this up, like, anything that's promoting that all or nothing mentality, right? We want to stay away from things that promote those kind of eat this, never eat that. It's never going to be an all or nothing thing. So definitely kind of recognize those as problem children. So I want to kind of take a minute here. I've been rambling for a bit and I want to hear from you guys. I should have told you at the beginning, but if you don't have like a piece of paper and a pen with you, go grab one. And let me know, kind of think back on everything we just talked about with diet culture, right? Like this whole idea that you're not enough, or that your weight is somehow impacting your health, or that your weight is even worse, impacting your worth. Kind of how has diet culture affected you? And you don't have to share it. If you're comfortable sharing it, I would love to hear it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and just tell me. But write it down for yourself at the very least, because I think it's really important to kind of unpack this. So kind of just think about all the things I just said about diet culture. How has it impacted you? And then maybe take it a step further and tell me, okay, how has this affected your habits, right? Have you developed habits out of an effort to control your body as a result of diet culture? And that can be controlling your weight, but it can also be controlling other things like, blood sugar, blood pressure, cholesterol, things like that too. Oh, Kieran's got her hand up. Hold on, let me see if I can get my mouse down to you. Kieran, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. I remember that I used to cry when I looked in the mirror and looked at my body.
Yeah.
Because I was told that if I just lost a little bit of weight, that I would look much prettier.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember going off of a diet that I was a very strict diet that I was on. I remember going off of it and crying to my mom that I was like a failure because I had gone off of this diet and that I had, I thought I had failed. And so that's how diet culture had impacted me when I was younger.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. It's a heartbreaking story, but I think a lot of us have been told that, right? It's like, oh, you'd be so much prettier if you were skinnier. And it's just like, I never said I was ugly, right? Like I maybe wanted to lose some weight for X, Y, or Z reason, but like nobody said that I was ugly. And this idea that you have to be thin in order to be attractive is just fat phobia all over the place. So I'm so sorry that that happened to you, but I think that that is such a common experience. And yeah, this feeling like a failure, I'm so glad you brought that up, because these diets with these names and these restrictions and this all or nothing mentality bring about this idea that like if it doesn't work for you, then it's not the diet that's the problem. Clearly that is based in science. If it doesn't work or you can't stick to it, then you are the problem, right? It puts the blame squarely on you. And that's not where the blame belongs, because obviously, the diet industry has had to like metamorphosize itself. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's had to change itself over and over and over again to rebrand itself, to remarket itself, because it doesn't work, right? If anything that works doesn't have to change, right? Like, just for example, like flossing and brushing your teeth prevents cavities, right? We have not like changed that recommendation. At least I'm not a dentist, but from what I know, we have not changed the recommendation that you should brush your teeth every day, twice a day, for certainly as long as I have been on this earth, right? how many ways has the diet industry changed things, right? It's a moving target. Yeah, sign is saying never beautiful or good enough, right? Yeah, and it's a mind fuck, right? It's this like idea that like either you're too, you're praised for being skinny, but you can't maintain that, or you're crucified for being fat and you want to change it. And it's just kind of this complete, warping of, well, what do I do? I've also had people who lost weight. And even if they did it in a healthful way, then they're criticized like, oh, you're just trying to be whatever, it's just like nothing that you do is ever good enough. And that's super frustrating as well. Katie, I think you had a comment up earlier saying, if you gain weight, it's kind of like what happened. And that's obviously damaging as well. Sorry, I didn't need to come off that. Try hitting the 60 mark with an obese body. Yeah, I bet the medical community is far less than kind about that. And we're going to get into BMI in just a little bit. But what I will say is that the BMI scale is not an accurate measure of, honestly, what it is meant to measure is whether or not you are carrying excess body fat. And it's not even an accurate measure of that. And then people take it a step further to insinuate that carrying excess body fat in some way negatively impacts your health. And when you get to a certain point, that can be true. But for most people in an obese body, it's not true. Or at least like I said just a second ago, that carrying the excess weight alone is not the reason why you're having health problems. But that's still what the medical community largely uses to assess health. And if you don't know, the BMI scale was developed by a statistician, not a doctor, and it was developed in 1682, which was over 400 years ago. And it was developed using a sample of 100, which is a very small sample size for clinical trials. If you guys remember, like the vaccine trials here recently went in like 40,000+ people. So 100 men, only men, all white men. So it doesn't apply to anyone of any other race, gender, ethnicity, none of that. So it's really bogus. But it's an easy calculation to make, so we still use it. And it's very frustrating to me as a medical provider to see it so widely used, because it really doesn't tell you much about anybody's health. Because like I said, the 4 determinants are your nutrition, your movement, your sleep, your whether or not you smoke. And stress is kind of in there as well, and genetics too. So it's just like, this BMI thing is crap. So why is every doctor, like breathing down my neck? And that's something that we really didn't talk about a lot, but a lot of people do go to doctors, and, you either treated differently because you're in a larger body, or things are blamed. So I've had a friend tell me that she went in with like some wrist pain, and her doctor was like, oh, it's because you're overweight. And she's like, no, like I woke up and I slept funny and my wrist hurts. Like, why would that be? What does that have to do with my weight? And you're not taken seriously. And there's all kinds of studies showing that, most doctors have implicit fat bias, and they don't treat fat patients the same way they treat skinny patients. And it's really frustrating, because those patients aren't getting the care that they need, which of course is never good. Oops, I'm sorry, guys. Got excited. So anyway, I hope you guys have had some time to kind of reflect on how diet culture has impacted you, and then certainly any habits that you've developed as an effort to control your body. And those can be habits that you think, whether you've tried to change your diet, whether you started exercising, or stopped smoking for that matter. Those things can be good things, but kind of what was the reason behind it, right? Were you trying to control your body, or were you trying to take care of it? And I think that's something that we're going to focus on a little bit more in a minute. But kind of diet culture gives us this idea that we should be able to control it, which again, of course, is somewhat of a lie. Okay, so we kind of talked about diet culture and how it warps our mindset. So how do we take care, or how do we fix it, right? How do we get past it? I think the biggest thing, and you guys are probably like not surprised at all to hear this by this point in the presentation, but we have to understand that there are no quick fixes, right? Like there's not going to be anything that's going to magically cure us. Like I said, no diet, no supplement, no nothing is going to magically cure it. It's going to be a process, and that's okay. And there's this quote from Carl Lowenthal, which I just absolutely love. And it says, how you experience the journey is how you will experience the destination. So I'm going to say that again for people who may be listening to audio. How you experience the journey is how you experience the destination. So, kind of to that end, the journey is going to feel, or sorry, the destination is going to feel like the journey did. So until you learn to approach that journey with love and compassion and care, the destination is going to feel the exact same, right? So if you're trying to control your body, if you're trying to shrink it because you hate it, if you're moving it because you hate it, then no matter what size you are, no matter what weight you eventually get to, you're going to feel that same hatred and self-loathing as you did when you were in a larger body, because the mindset piece is not there. We have to kind of fix the mindset piece first. So, I think kind of ways that might be helpful is to understand that there's no quick fixes, but also it doesn't have to be as rigid as diet culture tells us it has to be. So, changes do not have to be large. They don't have to be extreme. In fact, I would encourage them not to be large or extreme, right? Ways to think about it could be things like, thinking of, well, what can I add in, right, to my diet, for example? So kind of having that add in mentality. What can I add to my diet to give me more nutrition versus what should I take away? Another way to think about it that I really like is kind of developing what I call like a most of the time mentality, which is like, I exercise most of the time, right? I don't have to exercise every day, but I exercise most of the time. That can be really helpful. Another huge part of this is understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And this is really where this doing things out of care versus doing them out of control comes into play. So kind of, again, doing things because you hate your body, because you hate the way it looks, because you hate the way it feels. Those are really, really negative things to feel, versus doing things because you love your body and you want to take care of it. Those are very different places, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be how you feel about your body, but it can be, okay, what is motivating you, right? If you are somebody who has kids and you want to be able to play on the playground with them and not have mobility issues that are, because your size is restricting you, or if you are older, older adults, if they, want to be able to, go to the park and walk around and not be like wheezing or not having, kind of their legs be weak. Well, they may be more motivated to exercise because they want to build up that leg strength to keep up with their grandkids. If you're younger and you want to just feel your best, right? Like being an adult is hard and it's exhausting. So feeling your best, sleeping well, having better sex, whatever the case may be, like there's a lot of reasons to be your healthiest self, because you don't want to deal with sky high medical bills because insurance is not cheap and healthcare is expensive in this country. Those are all factors to like why you might want to change your health habits. So kind of for a second, I want you guys to just kind of reflect on what your why is. And again, you can certainly share it in the chat if you would like to. But yeah, otherwise just write it down for yourself. Just kind of give yourself a second. I say kind of what is your why? What do you want to, why is it important for you to make changes? Kieran is saying, okay, so Kieran, I'm going to challenge you. So her question is, what if I'm body neutral? I don't really like the way I look, but I don't absolutely hate it. And I want to control myself. Okay, so you're saying you don't want to control it. I don't know. That may be neutral, that may be not neutral. But, at the end of the day, it's kind of what do you love about it? What are there shouldn't really be any, it's okay that you don't necessarily love everything about it, but there should be some things that you love. And more importantly, this doesn't necessarily have to do with, in terms of like finding your why, it doesn't necessarily have to do about like changing your body shape or size. Like I don't do anything to change my body shape or size. I feed myself well because I want to feel good. I exercise because it gives me stress relief and it brings endorphins. Plus, I just feel like a badass when I go into the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm lifting really heavy stuff. So, kind of like what are the behaviors that you want, or what are the things that you want out of your health? So let's kind of make it more about health maybe than about your body, and kind of, bring it back that way. Like, what are some habits that you want to develop for the sake of bettering your health, and what is the motivator for that? I hope that helps. Let me know if it doesn't. All right, I got a thumbs up. That sounds good. So again, just kind of take a minute, kind of what is your why, right? Like what you're here for a reason, right? You all came to this webinar because you want to change something. So whatever that is, whether it's your health, whether it's certain habits, what is the reason why you're here, and what is it that you're hoping to change, and why is that? Katie, it's so funny that you say that, because that may or may not be on one of my next slides. But we'll get to that in just a second. I want you guys to kind of focus on your, we share a brain cell. We really do. And honestly, I feel like some days you have it more than I do. But it is a really good quote. We'll get to it in just a second. But yes, I totally agree. So what is your why? If anybody wants to share in the chat, by all means, go for it. If not, that's totally okay. Just write it down for yourself. Wants to love sports again. That's awesome. Tell me, and like, Sign, you don't have to tell me, but like, kind of what does sports bring you? Like, let's take it a step deeper. Like, what was it that sports brought you? Was it joy? Was it the thrill of victory? Was it being part of a team? Kind of like, what were the things that sports did for you that you want to be able to enjoy again? Every time I like try to move the mouse, it spazzes out on the slides. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're getting there. Not terrible. Okay, I'm not seeing a ton in the chat box, and that's totally okay. If you guys have more that you want to talk about with your why, then I'll still honor it in just a second. But for the sake of time, I do want to move on. So if your why is about your health, so we kind of talked about like not necessarily worrying about like your body and body positivity, but more about kind of how do I want to better my health. That's where like this focus on like what can I add in and what can I do most of the time. So kind of thinking about, okay, what are the things that I want to kind of focus on as the things I do most days? Is it drinking water? Is it getting 8 hours of sleep? Is it doing a guided meditation to help with my mental health? Is it eating vegetables? Is it whatever the case may be, you want to focus on the things that you can either add or do most of the time, but not think about what we have to restrict or what we have to avoid doing. It's more of what can we add into it, kind of spinning it to that more positive mindset can help a lot. And then if your why is more about confidence, right? So if that can be how you feel about your body, but it can also just be kind of how you want to show up in the world. Do I want to feel good and energized and confident in what I have to say, and those kinds of things? We need to focus on our thought patterns. And I just saw a couple of people posted in the chat about, I guess there might be a delay on this thing. That's maybe why I'm not getting them. So let's kind of talk through some of these whys and where they might fit. So Katie, I love this. Her goal is to embody everything that she preaches, which if you don't follow Katie, she's wonderful. She preaches things to teach your body neutrality, which we're going to talk about in just a second. And it's definitely still hard to embrace, right? Yeah. So I think, and that's one of the things that my business coach actually challenged me too. She's like, if you're going to talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk, right? And like that's exactly why, as a dietitian, I'm very real with people. I was on a live earlier today eating buffalo chicken dip like out of a bowl with a spoon. Like that is just like the life sometimes, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I have a very healthy diet, and there's nothing wrong with buffalo chicken dip. It's delicious, right? So I think that those are kinds of the things like, learning, being what you preach. Yes, absolutely. And I think that kind of falls into the more confidence side of things. And I'll explain why in just a second. I want to feel strong, like a badass soccer mom instead of the biggest mom on the sideline. Oh, I love that, Renee. Yeah. So, first of all, you are a mom. I don't know if you gave birth to your children or not, but if you did, like that is probably the biggest feat of heroism that any any of us will ever go through. If you did not give birth, you are still raising children, and that is also a huge feat of heroism. So you are in fact a badass. Your large body size does not determine that one way or the other. But that said, I understand what you're saying, that you want to feel confident and pretty and not feel like you are subject to ridicule just by existing. And that also goes into this confidence focus of things, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, yeah, Kieran, like nothing wrong with that, right? Like you want to be stronger and healthier, and yes, I'm human, I want to look better. I think part of your story is that you've also kind of had a very sudden, drastic weight change. And I don't think, we've talked about it, I don't think it's your fault, but it's just kind of, you feel like you're almost living in a different body. And I can understand from from your standpoint, when that happened in such a small period of time, it's like, whoa, what is going on here? Um, let's see. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. That's why we love you, because I'm assuming that's about the buffalo chicken dip. Yes. And I will not apologize for it. It was delicious. So I think, we kind of talked about the health and the add-in and the most of the time mentality. I want to talk about this confidence piece, because I feel like a lot of our goals, whether you realize it or not, probably do fit into this category. And we need to focus on our thought patterns. And that's where I was talking about earlier, this like the way you talk to yourself. There's a lot of really interesting kind of coaching work that centers around what they call thought work or thought processes. And the idea is that your thoughts drive your feelings, right? We like to think that our feelings are either like spontaneous or that they're the result of certain things happening to us, but there's really a middleman in there, and that's your brain. And that's your brain both perceiving what happened to you and also like drawing conclusions based on what happened to you. And that's what drives your feelings, right? I think, Katie, you gave a great example earlier today of like, if somebody doesn't text you back, right? Like if you text somebody and you don't get a response, there's a million reasons why that could have happened, right? Like they could have like lost their phone. They could have like thought that they replied and like didn't, or like if you're me, you typed out a response and like just forgot to hit send, or they're busy, like they fell asleep, or like, whatever the case may be. There could be a lot of reasons, right? But your brain can only handle one of those reasons. So it's going to say, oh, that person's mad at you. Oh, that person doesn't like you, this, that, or the other thing. And then you feel a certain way about it, right? You feel a certain kind of, oh, like that hurts my feelings, whatever the case may be, or like, oh, she's such a bitch anyway, like whatever it turns into. But your brain manifested that, right? Like your brain created that thought, which then created that feeling. And then you may do certain actions based on those thoughts and feelings, right? So, but it's this very linear process. It goes thoughts, feelings, actions. You cannot go the other way around, right? So like if you do not love the way your body looks, that's going to make you feel a certain way about it. So if you don't like it, you're going to want to change it. That's a feeling, right? You want this want to change, this need to control. Those are feelings. Those feelings are going to lead you to restrictive actions, if that makes sense. So but the restrictive actions won't then in turn change your thoughts or your feelings. So if you really want to change the way you feel about your body, whether that is body neutrality, it is accepting your body, that it is larger, it is, feeling confident standing as a soccer mom on the sideline, you need to do that thought work first. The behaviors won't get you there, if that makes sense. They can be part of it. The behaviors can certainly be helpful, But in the end of the day, you're going to have to do that thought work piece first. I hope that makes sense. If you guys have questions about that, by all means, type them in the chat, 'cause I know it's kind of a lot to take in all at once. Oops. Why are we not? Okay. So this just kind of goes into body talk, and this is kind of like how we can talk nicely to ourselves. And Katie, this is the quote I believe you were referring to, with body neutrality versus body positivity. So the body positivity movement came from a good place, right? It is kind of, like the healthy at every size, love your body for what it is. But at the end of the day, you're not necessarily going to love everything about your body, and that's okay, right? And some of us do want to be at a different weight because we do feel that it would be healthier for our bodies, and that's totally okay too. It is okay to want to lose weight. You don't have to love yourself you don't have to love that you're at a certain size, but you do have to love what your body is capable of doing for you, even at this size. So I think, body positivity is a little bit unrealistic. So people like Katie and myself practice what we call, or preach anyway, body neutrality. So body positivity would be like this person looking in the mirror and be like, oh, I love my cellulite, or I love how big my legs are, and blah, blah, blah. Like, you don't have to love those things. That is okay. But that said, you can also appreciate that those very same legs got you through a leg day workout, or they, get you from A to B, or, they get you up the stairs, out of bed, whatever it is, your legs have done something for you, I'm sure, in the last 24 hours. So, kind of understanding that your body is a functional device too, and that it can be helpful. So, and kind of just to that end, what the verbiage on the slide says, that, shame and self-loathing they're learned thought processes. So like all of this, like your thoughts drive your feelings, drive your actions. Those thoughts are typically learned. And that's where like the diet culture piece comes into this, because it's such a heavy, heavy driver of how we look at our bodies and how we think about them, and then how we feel about them, and then how we treat them. So a lot of times, if your goal is to build confidence and feel better about yourself and feel better in your own skin, the goal is not to, or the work is not to change the skin that you're in. The goal is to understand why you think and feel that way about the skin that you're in, and then work to change it. And then just kind of saying, learning to love your body as it is does motivate you to take care of it. So, I don't know that I really feel strongly one way or the other about body positivity or neutrality, but I think kind of learning to understand that your body is worthy at the very least, regardless of what size it is, definitely drives you to appreciate it and take care of it, even if you don't love all of the things about it, if that makes sense. So moving on. So this is kind of your chance to, again, reflect. What are 3 things that you like about yourself? And it does not have to do with your body. And then what are 3 things that you are really good at? So it's kind of find a way to appreciate at least ourselves. We can start to appreciate our bodies too, but I realize that that's kind of that can be some really deep work and be really triggering for some people. So I didn't want to put it on a webinar, but we'll just kind of keep this loose in terms of what are 3 things that you like about yourself, and what are 3 things that you're really good at. Again, feel free to share if you would like to, but you can also just write them down for yourself. And we are getting there, I promise. We will probably run just about 5-ish or so minutes over, maybe 10 minutes over with questions. So I do apologize if that is a problem for anyone. If you need to leave at 8 o'clock sharp, I totally understand. It is already 8 o'clock sharp. So, so we're probably going to run about, sorry, my clock on my computer is wrong. We've probably got about 10 more minutes of presentation, and then maybe another 5 or so minutes for questions after that. But it's been pretty interactive. Persistence, organizational skills, and your kindness towards others. Yes, ma'am. You are hands down one of the kindest individuals I know. And the most persistent. I would say that too. So 3 things you like about yourself and 3 things you are really good at. And my goal in this is not to just like have you kind of, I want you to kind of think as you're writing this down, how do you feel, right? Like it should in some ways kind of lift your mood I mean, you think, yeah, you know what? I'm pretty good. I've got this. This is where learning, you literally teach yourself to talk to yourself this way. Um, because anything that you do repeatedly you're going to learn. So this can be a practice that you do nightly in a journal. It could be a practice that you do every morning in the mirror. If anybody's heard of like daily affirmations and things like that, a lot of that work can be really helpful, because even if it's kind of hokey and weird and you don't quite believe it at first, that repetition is so key, because that's how diet culture that taught you that your body's not worth anything the way it um, is that was repeated to you, right, over and over and over again. It's going to take a minute for you to unlearn it. Katie, you're having a hard time thinking of a third, but you kind of put like three in there all at once. I would say giving advice and active listening are two different things. You're a very good trainer. And being a trainer and a coach are actually kind of two different things, in my opinion, too, because coaching has more to do with like motivating people and getting them there, whereas training is like kind of writing the workout. So those are, in my opinions, different skills. So really, you have four things already. Kieran saying I've not put thought into this. Yeah, and that's okay, right? Like that's totally okay. If you were stuck on like, I can only think of one thing, first of all, I'm putting you on the spot. So like that is okay. Like this is not a test. Nobody's gonna grade it, but it is a chance. It's hard. Okay, yeah, exactly. And that is the problem, right? Is that it shouldn't be. And like I'm not saying that any way out of judgment. Like we are so hard on ourselves, right? Like if I told you to think of four things that you don't like about yourself, you could probably name, or like four weaknesses that you have, you could probably rattle them off super quick, right? But that's why this work is so important, because you do need to understand that you are a valuable human, that you bring worth and value to society and those around you, regardless of what the hell your body looks like. It's a great wife, mom, grandmother, awesome sense of humor, and helpful to others. I love that. Yes, absolutely. Oops, saying yes to Renee. What did Renee say? Oh, Renee, I'm so sorry. I missed it. I like my energy and competitiveness and caring personality. Yes, I love that. Competition can be fun, like, right? Like competition can like create like fun friendships to make it playful. And caring, obviously we need more caring people in the world. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. For the sake of time, I am going to move on, but as we can see, this work is important, right? So I think I would definitely encourage you all to keep doing it in some capacity, right? Like it may be a thought, it may be some quiet time to reflect, it may be a journaling exercise, it may be daily affirmations in the mirror. You could write things down on a sticky note and like stick them into the mirror to remind yourself when you're looking at yourself, like who you really are. But learning to cultivate this sense of worth that has nothing to do with your body is very, very important, because it will change the way you think about yourself, it'll change the way you feel about yourself, and then it'll change the way you ultimately treat yourself, which is where we're going next, if I can get my slides to advance. Okay, so let's set some goals. So what I want you all to think about, again, write it down. What is your number one goal this year? And you do not have to share this if you don't want to. I would welcome you to. But what is your number one goal, right? Like, what is the one thing you want to achieve this year? And I'm telling you, I don't care where you are, what you're doing, write it down somewhere, put it in your phone. There is research that suggests that if we write our goals down, you are 40%, just by writing it down, 40% more likely to do it. So write down whatever that goal is for you. And it may take you a minute to like think of it. You may not have it right now. That's totally okay. But I'll just kind of use myself as an example while you guys are thinking. So like my number one goal, if you guys don't know this about me, I work as a dietitian in a hospital here in Kentucky. That's a full-time job, and I like it, but I don't love the American healthcare system. I love it even less through the pandemic. And I really am just tired of working for somebody else by somebody else's rules. I'm too outspoken. I'm too loud. I'm too fragrant, like whatever, like it just, I want to work for myself. That's my number one goal, is to get myself to a place where my private practice, which is why I'm building all these coaching tools, is to get myself to where my private practice and my own business is what sustains me full time. That's my number one goal. I may not get there by the end of 2022, but that is my ultimate goal. And everything I do in 2022 is going to be working towards that goal. If I don't accomplish it in 2022, then guess what? 2023, we're coming for you. So I think, that's kind of the mentality to take, is kind of like, what's that one thing? Budget better, increase my income, save up for our house. Yeah. So Katie, I'm just going to reword that a little bit. To me, reading that, it sounds like the house is actually the goal, is to save up for a down payment on a house. And then the budget and the increase in income, those are steps to save up to that house, is kind of where I would put those things. But great goal. Sticking to my new habits. Yeah, I love that, right? I love normalizing. I'm okay with what I'm doing. I just need to keep doing it, right? And like, that's a process in and of itself. So I love that, Kieran. I think that's a great goal. Sciences love life. Yeah. Hey, man, that's hard. There are gonna be days when you don't love life, and that is totally, totally okay. But kind of reminding yourself of like, this was my goal. This is the goal that I set myself. So if I don't love life, let's figure out why. Let's figure out what's going on. Is it a situation that I can change? Is it, something that I need more support from like a mental health professional? Is it something that I, need more of in my life? Is it something I need less of in my life, right? Like kind of going back to the drawing board and reevaluating, what is bringing me joy? What is draining my joy? And how do I get that love from life? I totally love that. To feel healthier, I love that. And I think, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what healthier means and what healthier looks like, right? Because healthier is kind of broad, right? So my challenge to you would be, hey, okay, I want to be healthier. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean losing weight? Does that mean healthier eating habits? Does that mean exercising more? Does that mean, a health metric like blood pressure, blood sugar, anything like that? Because and I say that because trying to do all of those things, which I'm guessing is probably the answer you're going to try to give me here, Cindy, we don't want to change all of those things. We want to pick one. So if health is the goal, that's totally fine. But how are we going to get there? And that's what we're actually going to talk about next. But before we kind of talk about our steps, I want you to think about, if your goal has to do with your body, and it doesn't, Katie, for example, your goal is kind of more financial, mine is too, but kind of for me, I guess my blocks are maybe more mental than they are health-wise or, kind of behavioral, if that makes sense. So what would it look like for you to work in partnership with your body, right? So for those of you who do have health goals, what would it look like instead of I feel like so often diet culture teaches us that our body is the enemy, or that food is the enemy, and that we have to do these things to punish ourselves because we're ultimately not worthy, right? We have that negative thought process on the front end. So instead, what would it look like to work with your body, right? To view it as a viable partner. Kind of how would that look? How would that change the way you approach these behaviors that you're trying to undertake? So for example, Cindy, kind of if you're wanting to feel healthier, well, what would it look like if you use your body as an asset in that? Same for you, Kieran, like you've developed these new habits, but what would it look like for you mentally to treat your body as a partner in that rather than just something that's subjected to it? And for those of us who kind of have more maybe like mental goals, so like, the finding joy in life, finances, my goal is to start a business, kind of what would it look like for me to work with my brain, right? What would it look like for me to work with the circumstances I'm in, right? Like trying to build a business while working a full-time job is not easy. It is in fact very, very hard. So what would it look like to use those circumstances to my advantage? How can I use that? It's draining, sure, but at my full-time job, I'm getting lots of counseling experience. I'm learning lots of ways that I don't want to do things in the future. So I'm also learning how I do want to do them. I also will be fully honest, I am starting to detest my job. And that is actually starting to fuel my passion for building a new business. Katie, money is like, we're saving up for a house. It's kind of like, okay, it's not just about the grind. It's not just about the money. It's not just about budgeting. It's like, how do I use this mentality of like, okay, do I need to post pictures of houses that I want? Do I need to, to have like, family meeting every month to kind of reevaluate the budget? Kind of how do I make that dream feel so tangible that it's a part of everything I'm doing every day? So again, sorry, I got long-winded on that, but I hope that kind of helps give you guys the ideas of like what we're really talking about here. Is not just, isn't just necessarily just have to do with your body. Kieran, I can't tell if you raised your hand or gave me a thumbs up, but if you want to unmute yourself, that's fine.
I gave you a thumbs up.
Okay. It's like it flashed, but it flashed so fast. I'm like, and like they're both on there, so I don't know. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the thumbs up. Okay. So that's kind of our moving. So that's kind of how we set our goals, right? It's kind of what do we want and kind of why is it important? And then we talk about what are the steps, right? So, and I love this quote again, Cara Lowenthal, my girl. I'm going to show you guys her podcast here when we get to the end, but I absolutely love her. And she says that a step should feel so small that your brain tells you it doesn't count. And I just love this because so often diet culture tells us that we need to throw ourselves into this torture wheel to change our bodies or to change our health. And like, you just simply don't. And honestly, if you try to, and Cindy, I think this kind of goes back to what you were talking about. If you try to do too much at once, you're probably honestly going to crash and burn. And I think all of us who have ever, been a part of a diet cycle have learned that, right? Have learned that you're going to crash and burn. So how do we combat that? And it's taking small steps. It truly is just taking those baby steps. So if you are somebody who, for example, I don't know if you guys have read the book Atomic Habits, but I absolutely love it. It's by James Clear. I've got a slide on it at the end. But he talks about a guy whose goal was to lose weight, and to lose weight, he wanted to start working out. And he first started, he would get up in the morning and go to the gym and just kind of like hang out at the gym, like kind of just walk around, get a feel for the equipment, but not actually work out. He would just kind of like hang out at the gym and then leave, go home, shower, get ready for work. But for him, a crucial step in building that habit of going to the gym and working out was just to start with just getting to the gym before he actually did anything. So I think kind of taking those kinds of like very, very small, but very incremental steps is very important. So, you may not be somebody who works out currently, but you can start just by walking, 5-10 minutes a day and work your way up to finding some other form or more intense form of movement. If you're somebody who's trying to improve your diet, but you're not sure where to start, just start thinking about, okay, what can I add in, right? I don't need to do this whole like Mediterranean or keto or like any kind of crazy restrictive diet, but I can start with just adding in an extra vegetable every day, or it's adding in a vegetable every day, like trying to make sure every day I'm gonna get a vegetable. And then the next week, every day I get a fruit. And then the next week, maybe I get 2 vegetables plus my fruit, right? So you kind of build it up incrementally to where, these very, very small steps, you're eventually going to get there, but you're giving them the time, you're giving yourself the time you need to adapt to the first habit before you move on. And then the other thing about kind of these steps is that they have to allow for adaptation, right? So for example, you may, purchase a gym membership, go to the gym, find out like you just hate being in the gym. Like nothing you can find to do in the gym is joyful movement for your body. Well, that's fine. There's 1,000 ways to move your body. You can ride a bike, you can swim, you can walk, you can run, you can dance. There's a lot of things. So especially this time of year, most gym memberships will give you like a free week or free trial period. So use that, right? Like find different places to work out or different types of movement that you enjoy And when you find something like, wow, I really like this, like this makes me feel great, I look forward to coming to it, the people here are awesome, then like that's your thing, right? Then that's the thing you should stick to. But, say somewhere down the road, that particular facility closes, well, then same thing again, try out several others, find another one that you like. Because, and ultimately that comes back to kind of this compassion piece of kind of meeting yourself where you are, and understanding that like it doesn't have to be perfect, it's a journey. Right? And having that kinder self-talk will then foster this idea of learning, right? This isn't something that I'm just not good enough or I'm not doing properly. Instead, it becomes more of, this didn't quite work for me. What can I take that I learned from this, and how can I find something that works better? Right? And that applies to basically anything you are trying to do, health or not, right? If it's, hmm, setting a grocery budget every week didn't work great because, like they have different sales and different things. But maybe if I just kind of set a monthly budget, maybe that will work better, right? It's not, I didn't stick to my weekly budget. It's more of, that didn't quite work. Let me kind of reevaluate why. Oh, because I just shop heavier certain weeks than others. So maybe a monthly budget would be a more effective way to go. Same goes for like, I've tried to eat a vegetable every day, but I really, really don't like vegetables. So maybe instead of trying to force myself to eat vegetables, instead I try a new vegetable every week until I find some that I like, or try preparing them different ways until I find ways that I like. So again, it's this thought piece. It's this rejection that you are not worthy. It is this rejection that, you need to fit into a certain mold to be successful. And then it is instead replacing that with self-love and self-compassion, and then learning how to adapt accordingly. I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Cindy is saying that has definitely happened to me. My ankles get blood pressure back under control. Oh goodness. 211 over 112. I'm surprised they let you walk out of the office. That is scary high. Yeah. So, it's kind of, finding dietary factors or lifestyle factors. If you smoke or anything like that, those can definitely affect your blood pressure. Stress, sleep, all of those things definitely affect your blood pressure. And so I think having, a really good conversation with your doctor, or kind of, whoever it is that's helping you with your health, is to, and I think that's another thing people don't realize too, is that your doctor should be your partner too. Your doctor is not your boss. You don't do things to make your doctor happy. Your doctor, if anything, is working in service to you. He's providing you with education and, knowledge. But at the end of the day, like, you're not doing anything to please them. It's your life. So, whoever your doctor or your healthcare provider should very much feel like a partner to you as well. I know they often don't, but definitely keep fighting until they do. All right. I think we are mostly done. I promise. I'm sorry, guys. We are definitely over time. But I did want to wrap up just with a couple of resources that I love, just because I have quoted them somewhat extensively throughout this presentation. Two podcasts that I absolutely love. One is Unfuck Your Brain by Cara Lowenthal. I quoted her a couple of times. Her podcast is amazing. She's a writer, but she was originally a lawyer, and now she's a writer, and kind of like a mindset coach. But she's wonderful. Another one is called the Nourishing Women podcast. It's Victoria Myers, who's also an RD, but she brings in lots of fun guest speakers. Again, very, very powerful, very, very encouraging. Books, if you're more of a reader, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Honestly, everybody should read this book. It is just such a great, great way. It's right there in the title, Tiny Habits, Remarkable Results, of how to kind of step by step, regardless of what your habits are or whatever goal you're trying to achieve. It's just a really good rundown. It's also a very fast read. I think I read it probably in like 2 days, and I wasn't necessarily trying to. It's a very clear cut, accessible book to read. And if you are somebody who is struggling with body image issues, or kind of really struggling with kind of rejecting that diet culture piece that we talked about, Anti-Diet and Body Respect are probably the two books that I would start with. And, anti-diet talks much more about, well, I don't know. They're both very much just kind of, they do preach a little bit on intuitive eating, but it kind of talks about how basically your weight is not a determinant of your health, and kind of, a lot of the things that you've heard from diet culture that might be wrong. So I think that those are two very, very, very good resources as well. Um, Takeaways. If you have learned nothing else today, I hope you learned that your body shape and size does not determine your health, and it sure as hell does not determine your worth. Your health goals, really any goals, are going to be most successful when they are driven by compassion rather than guilt. So kind of meeting yourself with compassion is so important. And then setting small, flexible steps is the best way to guarantee long-term results. And then, of course, I always appreciate a good food pun. So you've got this, you can do it. Have a little encouragement, because it's a mint leaf. As I said, you guys will get a free counseling session with me, but it's only available for the next 72 hours. So you guys will get a replay here in just a little bit with instructions on how to book. But if you want to book now, because sometimes it takes a little while for that video to download, just head over to my website. It's right there on your screen. And then on this services and pricing page, you should see, I think the discovery call is listed first, which is also free. So if you are listening to the replay, you can certainly book that one. But for those of you who are here live, you can go ahead and book that free consult. And then, of course, access to me. I am on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Those are my handles. I'm also on Facebook. I just kind of use Facebook, honestly, more for like personal stuff, but you're certainly welcome to reach there. It's just my name, Erin Casey. You see all of my wedding pictures for the most part, and my dogs. So with that, I'll take any questions. Again, thank you guys so much for being here. I know that we are quite over on time, so if you were hanging out still, I so appreciate it. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of turn it over to questions for the time being. If you guys have any questions, any thoughts, anything that I didn't cover, by all means, fire them away in the chat. You're more than welcome to raise your hand or anything like that, but I'm just going to kind of open it up to you all. And if you need to hop off, again, I thank you for coming, and have a wonderful rest of your night. Katie, thank you. All right, Kieran, will you go tuck us in? I know we're late, so I apologize, guys. I always go longer than I intend to. It's just how I do. You're welcome, Renee. Welcome. You're welcome. Absolutely. Yes, it's very important to think of the things you are good at. Absolutely. You guys are so welcome. And you all, that even though you're here live, you'll still get the replay too. So, you're welcome to send it to whoever if you think it would be beneficial, or just have it if you found particular parts useful. Well, I am not seeing a ton of questions, so I am more than happy to let you all go. But that said, I'm going to do monthly webinars. So next month webinar, it is going to be, so my part of building my business in 2022 is to offer myself free of charge for people to get to know me and kind of, understand what I'm all about. So next month's webinar is going to be the second Sunday of every month at 7 p.m. And next month is going to be kind of all about, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into these diet cultural lies and kind of habits that we think are normal that are actually disordered. So we're going to kind of talk about what is normal kind of healthy eating and what maybe isn't. So that's kind of on tap for next month. But that said, I would love to hear from you guys and topics that you want to hear more about, concerns that you have, things that you liked about this webinar, things that you didn't like about this webinar. All of that I take into consideration, because for me, this is very much a learning process too. So I don't expect it to be 100% perfect every time, and I'm definitely going to get better as I go. But if there were things that you felt like would be better utilized or whatever, I welcome all of that too. You don't necessarily have to tell me right now. If it's something you want to reach out to me on social media or email me, I'm very open to suggestions and things like that as well. So with that, let's see, I don't see anybody saying anything else. So I'm going to let you guys go. We're going to hop off, but thank you all so much for hanging with me for an hour and a half of your evening, or whenever it is that you're listening to this. I hope you all feel empowered and are ready to go crush whatever your goals are in 2022. Have a wonderful, wonderful night, everyone.